At this point, we can state what evil means in a Thelemic sense more precisely, and by contrast, state more precisely what the liberation of the saint is. We said earlier that evil means restriction. It means taking one part of reality and arbitrarily separating it or walling it off from another part of reality. But that is precisely what happens when we identify some part of Nuit as self and oppose it to some other part we call other. Notice a few things here. First, once again, there is no moral connotation to this notion of evil. Thelemic evil has to do with a confusion about the nature of fundamental reality. It has nothing to do with harming anyone or breaking any moral laws. Secondly, the Black brothers' assertion of their individuality in the face of time must fail. What they take to be themselves is necessarily in time, because it is part of Nuit and is subject to her laws, not theirs. 3, when we identify ourselves with some part of Nuit, we are identifying ourselves with some particular impermanent thing. But as we saw earlier, this is an essential reason why we suffer in the first place. We're trying to make a permanent state of affairs out of something that is constantly changing. So evil is the cause of suffering, and destroying evil will necessarily bring suffering to an end and liberate us. So what happens when we clear up this confusion? The first thing is that she, Nuit, becomes whole. She is experienced beyond the false dualities we have imposed upon her. When we are no longer under the mistaken impression that some part of her is observing some other part, all sensations, all things whatsoever, are understood to be part of a unified field of experience. The sameness and self-sufficiency of all things is appreciated. Second, now that we no longer confuse ourselves with some aspect of Nuit, our true selves become apparent to us. We know once and for all that we are not our bodies, not our feelings, not our memories, not our aspirations, not our thoughts, not any sensation whatsoever. We know that we are Hadit. Now, I said earlier that this diagram was not quite accurate. Hadit is represented by a small oval. But Crowley really says he is an infinitely small point. Hadit, the self, the observer, the doer, is no thing whatsoever. So in any experience of the world, there is only the experiencing, the thing experienced, but there is in reality no separate thing or object or sensation doing the observing. The self is completely insubstantial. In the seeing, only the seen. In the hearing, only the heard. In the thinking, only the thought. In other words, there is no sense of a separate observer at all. How then do we represent the relationship between Nuit and Hadit? Can we even really represent it? The true nature of experience is that there is no separation between things. There is no independent observer. Hadit has no nature of his own other than to go toward Nuit, to continually dissolve in ecstasy in her. Each moment is orgasmic union with her. You think you live in a world of tables, chairs, subatomic particles, Wednesdays, and anticipated unemployment checks. You're wrong. You live in a world of orgasms. You can't see that because you are critically wrong about who and what you are. Basically, your ego is in the way. The apparent folds in the garment of experience are obscuring this. As Crowley says, Hadit knows Nuit by virtue of his going or love. It is therefore wrong to worship Hadit. One is to be Hadit and worship her.